Chapter 15, King Italig. Down he spun, battling for air in a flood that broke him like a crumbling mountain. Faster and faster the waters bore him along, tossing him right and left. Taran collided with something. What was it? He could not tell. But he clung to it even though his strength had failed him. There was a crash, as though the earth had split asunder and the water turned to foam. Then Taran felt himself dashed against an unyielding wall. He remembered nothing more. When he opened his eyes, he was lying on a hard, smooth surface, his hand tightly gripping Fflewddir's harp. He had heard the rush of water close by. Cautiously, he felt around him. His fingers touched only wet, flat stone. An embankment of some kind, a pale blue light shone high above him. Taran figured he had come to rest in a cave or grotto. He raised himself, and his moment set the harp to jangling. "Hello, what's that?" A voice echoed down the embankment. Faint though it was, Taran recognized it belonged to the bard. He scrambled to his feet and crept in the direction of the sound. On the way, he tripped over a form which suddenly became vocal and indignant. "You've done very well, Taran of Caer-Dallben, with all of your shortcuts. What's left of me is soaked to the skin, and I can't find my bauble. Oh, here it is, all wet, of course, and who knows what's happened to the rest of us." The golden light flared dimly to reveal the dripping face of Eilonwy, her blue eyes flashing with vexation. Gurgi's hairy, sputtering shadow rolled around. "Oh, poor tender head is filled with sloshings and washings." In another moment, Fflewddir had found them. Malinger whinnied behind them. "I thought I'd heard my harp down here," he said. "I couldn't believe it at first. Never expected to see it again, but a flam never despairs. Quite a stroke of luck, though." "I never thought I'd see anything again," Taran said, handing the instrument to Fflewddir. "We've been washed into a cave of some kind, but it's not a natural one. Look at those flagstones." "If you'd look at Malinger," Eilonwy said, "you'd see all our provisions are gone. All our weapons, too, thanks to your precious shortcut." It was true. The straps had broken loose. The saddle had torn away in the whirlpool. Luckily, the companions still had their swords. "I'm sorry," Taran said. "I admit we are here through my fault. I should not have followed this path, but what's done is done. I led us here, and I will find a way out." He glanced around. The roar of water came from a wide, swift-running canal. The embankment itself was much broader than he realized. Lights of various colors glowed in the high arches. He turned to his companions. "This is very curious. We seem to be deep underground, but it isn't the lake bottom." Before he could utter another word, he was seized from behind, and a bag smelling strongly of onions was jammed over his head. Eilonwy screamed, and her voice grew muffled. Taran was being half pushed, half dragged in two directions at once, Gurgi yelping furiously. "Here, get that one," a gruff voice shouted. "Get him yourself. Can't you see I've got my hands full?" Taran struck out. A solid, round ball that must have been someone's head butted into his stomach. There were slapping noises filtering through the oniony darkness around him. Those would be from Eilonwy. Now he was pushed from behind and propelled at top speed while angry voices shouted at him and at each other. "Hustle along there! You fool, you didn't take their swords!" At this came another shriek from Eilonwy, the sound of what might have been a kick, and then a moment of silence. "All right, let them keep their swords. You'll have the blame of it, though, letting them approach King Italig with weapons." At a blind trot, Taran was shoved through what seemed a large crowd of people. Everyone was talking at once. The noise was deafening. After a number of turns, he was thrust forward again. A heavy door snapped behind him, and the onion bag was snatched from his head. Taran blinked. With Fflewddir and Eilonwy, he stood in the center of a high-vaulted chamber, glittering with lights. Gurgi was nowhere in sight. Their captors were half a dozen squat, round, stubby-legged warriors. Axes hung from their belts, and each man had a bow and quiver of arrows on his shoulder. The left eye of the short, burly fellow who stood beside Illinois was turning greenish black. Before them, at a long stone table, a dwarfish figure with a bristling yellow beard glared at the warriors. He wore a robe of garish red and green. Rings sparkled his plump fingers. "What's this?" he said. "Who are these people? Didn't I give orders I wasn't to be disturbed?" "But, Majesty," one of the warriors began, shifting uneasily, "we caught them." "Must you bother me with the details? You'll ruin me. You'll be the death of me. Out, out." "No, not the prisoners, you idiots!" Shaking his head, sighing and sputtering, the king collapsed onto a throne carved from rock. The guards scurried away. King Italig shot a furious glance at Taran and his companions. "Now then, out with it. What do you want? You might as well know ahead of time. You shan't have it, sire," Taran said. "We ask no more than safe passage through your realm. The four of us—" "There's only 3 of you. Can't you count?" "One of my companions is missing," Taran said regretfully. He had hoped Gurgi would have overcome his fear, but he could not blame the creature for running off after the ordeal in the whirlpool. "I beg your servants to help us find him. Then, too, our provisions and weapons have been lost." "That's clotted nonsense. Don't lie to me. I can't stand it." And he pulled an orange kerchief from his sleeve and mopped his forehead. "Why did you come here?" "Because an assistant pigkeeper led us on a wild goose chase," Illinois interrupted. "We don't know where we are, let alone why. It's worse than rolling downhill in the dark." "Naturally," King Italig said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You have no idea that you're in the very heart of the kingdom of Twyleth Tig. The fair folk, the happy family, the little people, or whatever others insipid, irritating names you've put on us. Oh, no, of course not. You just happened to be passing by." "We were caught in the lake," Taran protested. "It pulled us down." "Good, eh?" Italig answered with a smile of pride. "I've added some improvements of my own, of course." "But if you're so anxious to keep visitors away," Illinois said, you should have something better to make people stay out." "When people get this close," Italig answered, "they're already too close. At that point, I don't want them out. I want them in." Fluter shook his head. "I always understood the fair folk were all over Prydain, not just here." "Of course not just here," Italig said with impatience. "This is the royal seat. Why, we have tunnels and mines every place you can imagine. But the real work, the real labor of organization is right here in this very spot, in this very throne room, on my shoulders. And it's too much, I tell you, too much. But what else can you trust? If you want something done right—" King Italig stopped and drummed his glittering fingers on the stone table. "That's not your affair. You're in trouble enough as it is. It can't be overlooked." "I don't see any work being done," said Illinois. Before Taran could warn Italig about not to be imprudent, the door of the throne room burst open and a crowd of folk pressed in. Looking closer, Taran saw not all were dwarfs. Some were tall and slender with white robes. Others were covered in glistening scales like fish, and still others fluttered large, delicate wings. For some moments, Taran heard nothing but a confusion of voices, angry outcries, and bickering, with Italig trying to shout above them. Finally, the king managed to push them all out again. "No work being done," he said. "You don't appreciate everything that goes into it. The Children of the Evening, that's another ridiculous name you humans thought up, are to sing in the forest of Contrev Moor tonight. They haven't even practiced. 2 are sick and 1 can't be found. The lake sprites that have been quarreling all day, and now they're sulking. Their hair's a mess. And who does that reflect on? Who has to jolly them along, coax them, and plead with them? The answer is obvious. What thanks do I get for it? Italy ranted on. None at all. Have any of you long-legged gawks ever taken the trouble, even once, mind you, to offer the simplest expression of gratitude, such as, "Thank you, King Italy, for the tremendous effort and inconvenience you've gone through, so that we can enjoy just a little charm and beauty in the world above, which would be so unspeakably grim without the fair folk. Just a few words of honest appreciation." By no means, just the opposite. I think of you thick-skulled oafs come in what happens if you come in upon one of the fair folk above ground? You seize him, you grab him with your great hammy hands, and you try to make him lead you to buried treasure. Or you squeeze him until you get 3 wishes out of him. Not satisfied with 1, oh no, but 3. Well, I don't mind telling you this, Italy went on, his face turning redder by the moment. I've put an end to all this wish-granting and treasure scavenging. No more, absolutely not. I'm surprised you didn't ruin us long ago. Just then, a chorus of voices rose from behind the door of Italy's throne room. The harmonies penetrated even the walls of heavy stone. Tarn had never heard such beautiful singing. He listened, enchanted, forgetting for the moment all but the soaring melody. Italy himself stopped shouting and puffing until the voices died away. "That's something to be thankful for," the king said at last. "The children of the evening evidently have got together again. Not as good as you might want, but they'll manage somehow." "I have not heard the songs of the fair folk until now," Tarn said. "I never realized how lovely they were." "Don't try to flatter me," Italig said, trying to look furious, but beaming at the same time. "What surprises me," Ilanwi said, while the bard plucked meditatively at his harp, trying to recapture the notes of the song, "is why do you go to such trouble? If you fair folk dislike us above the ground, why do you bother?" "Professional pride, my dear girl," said the dwarf king, putting a chubby hand to his heart and bowing slightly. "When we fair folk do something, we do it right. Oh, yes, never mind the sacrifices we make. If there's a task that needs to be doing, we do it. Never mind the cost. For myself," he added with a wave of his hand, "it doesn't matter. I've lost sleep, I've lost weight, but it's not important." If King Italy had lost weight, Tarn thought to himself, what must he have looked like beforehand? He decided against asking the question. "Well, I appreciate it. Said Ilanwi, "I think it's amazing what you've been able to do. You must be extremely clever, and any assistant pig keepers who happens to be in this throne room might do well to pay attention." "Thank you, dear girl," King Italig said, bowing low. "I see you're the sort of person one can talk to intelligently. It's unheard of for one of you big shambling lots to have any kind of insight into these matters, but you at least seem to understand the problems we face." "Sire," interrupted Tarn, "we understand your time is precious. Let us disturb you no more. Give us safe conduct to Caer Dithel." "What? Leave here? Impossible! Unheard of! Once you're with the fair folk, my good lad, you stay, and make no mistake of it. Oh, I suppose I could stretch the point for the sake of the young lady and let you off easily. Only to put you to sleep for 50 years or turn you into bats. But that would be a pure favor, mind you. Our task is urgent. Even now, we have been delayed too long." "That's your concern, not mine," said Italy. "Then we shall have to make our own way," Tarn shouted, drawing his sword. Fluter's blade leaped out, and the bard stood with Tarn, ready to fight. "No more clotted nonsense," King Italy said, looking contemptuously at the swords pointed at him. He shook his fingers at them. "There, and there. That might hold. Now you might try to move your arms." Tarn strained every muscle. His body felt as if it had been turned to stone. "Put your swords away and let's talk this over calmly," he said. "If you give me any decent reasons why I should let you go, I might think it over and answer you promptly. Say in a year or two." That there could be no use, Tarn saw, in concealing the reasons for his journey. He explained to Italig what had befallen them, The dwarf king ceased his blustering at the mention of Arn, but when Taran had finished, King Italig shook his head. This is a conflict you great gawks must attend to yourselves. The fair folk owe you no allegiance. Prydain belonged to us before the race of men came along. You drove us underground. You plundered our mines. You plundering clodpoles. You stole our treasures, and you keep on stealing them, you clumsy of sire. Taran answered, I can answer for no man but myself. I have never robbed you, and I have no wish to. My task means more to me than your treasures. If there is ill will between the fair folk and the race of men, then that is a matter to be settled by them. But if the Horn King triumphs, if the shadow of Annuvin falls on the land above you, Arn's hand will reach into your deepest caverns. For an assistant pig keeper, said Italig, you're reasonably eloquent. But the fair folk will worry about Arn when the time comes. The time has come, Taran said. I only hope the time is not past. I don't think you really understand what's going on above ground, Ilan, we exclaimed. You talk about charm and beauty and sacrificing yourself to make things pleasant for people. I don't believe you care a bit for that. You're too conceited and stubborn and selfish. Conceited, said Italig, his eyes popping. Selfish! You won't find any more open-hearted and generous. How dare you say that? What do you mean? What do you want? My life's blood? And with that he tore off his cloak, threw it in the air, pulled the rings from his fingers, and tossed them in every direction. Go ahead, take it all, leave me ruined. What else do you want? My whole kingdom? Do you want me to leave? Go, by all means. The sooner the better. Stubborn? Ha! I'm too soft. It'll be the death of me, but little you care. And at that moment, the door to the throne room burst open again, and two dwarf warriors clung frantically to Gurgi, who swung them about as if they were rabbits. Joyous greetings! Faithful Gurgi is back with mighty heroes. This time, valiant Gurgi did not run. Oh, no! Brave Gurgi fought with great whackings and smackings. He triumphed, but then mighty lords are carried away. Clever Gurgi goes seeking and peeking to save them, and finds them. But that is not all. Oh, faithful, honest, fearless Gurgi finds more. Surprises and delights. Oh, joy! Gurgi was so excited that he began dancing and spinning around on one foot and clapping his hands. Mighty warriors go to seek a piggy. It is clever, wise Gurgi who finds her. And when? Taran cried. Where is she? Here, mighty lord, Gurgi shouted. The piggy is here. Which will bring us to chapter 16, Doli.